Okay, so starting.
G'day, it's Chad here from The Way of Meditation. Today we've got a special guest, Adrianna Spataru. She is a psychologist and mindfulness teacher. And we're going to have a little chat about psychology and mindfulness and emotional and mental well-being. So thank you for joining me today, Adrianna. And I'd like to ask you the first question, which I'm really interested in, is the connection between cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, something that psychologists commonly use, and mindfulness-based therapy, using mindfulness to overcome mental and emotional disturbances. So what's the difference and the connection between CBT and a mindfulness-based approach to therapy?
Well, Chad, I would say that first of all, the first cognitive therapists were actually Buddhists, because they were the first who said, okay, let's see what's in our mind and what creates suffering into ourselves. And then we can see that there are the thoughts that are actually making us creating suffering into ourselves and putting us far away from our own well-being and fulfillment. So in a way, psychologists have roots in Buddhism, if we can see it that way. But actually, I would say that the main difference between CBT and mindfulness-based approaches would be the how versus the why. And what I mean by that is that CBT, so cognitive behavioral therapists, really go into the thoughts patterns. So let's see why, what's going on into our mind that's creating us pain. For example, if I have a thought like, I'm not good enough for this, or maybe nobody should love me, nobody can love me. This is a thought. So this is an irrational belief that's creating suffering for myself. And in CBT, psychologists go to see this kind of thoughts and maybe go into the why is this thought and decompose it. While mindfulness goes into the how do I experience this thought? So, and what's the connection with the body? For example, how do I feel this thought in the body? What kind of reaction is there? In what emotion comes with it? And not really going into what that thought is. So just noticing it and letting it go. So I would say that this is the main difference also from CBT and mindfulness. But actually, in CBT, there is this third wave, which we talked a little bit about, which is a mindfulness-based approach of CBT. So for example, we have the MBCT, which is mindfulness-based cognitive therapy, which is a group therapy. It was created especially for depression, for treating depression, but it has such wonderful results in science with any other psychological I wouldn't say disorders, but struggles that we might have, like for anxiety or attention or anything else. And also we have ACT, like acceptance and cognitive therapy, that has a lot of mindfulness based, and also compassion focused therapy, which is developed by Paul Gilbert, which has a good mindfulness and compassion, which I would say contemplative practices at its basis.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, there's a lot to choose from, isn't there, for people these days, searching for a psychologist or a therapist or just someone to help them with their mental and emotional well-being.
Yeah.
In your experience, people are struggling so much today with the pandemic around the world and what's going on. It's very difficult times. In your experience, what are people coming to you with struggles? What are people really struggling with? And what do you see as the underlying causes of those struggles?
That's a very good question, Chad, because I would say that nowadays, especially with this pandemic, people come more with problems that are not maybe pandemic specific related, but are related with something else that we have in our experience, and maybe something that there was something deep down inside that now explodes, I would say. Because actually I would say that this is exactly what this experience that we all in the entire world we all have, is that there is this struggle of stress, because there is a lot of stress, at least stress, that we are dealing with. It's painful, it's something new, we don't know how to react. And when something new appears into our lives that might be stressful, actually it's like it's creating like a small bomb maybe, because it brings everything that we didn't maybe pursue and see that's inside of us, and it just puts the lights on it. So yeah, uh, and
Would you
for
say,
example,
especially for people, sorry, like especially for people in lockdown or who have lost their jobs and all these new things happening, they're really having to face themselves, aren't they? Like sitting without something to do, being at home, locked in their houses. This really brings you face to face with yourself without all the distractions of work and other things.
exactly,
Um,
yeah.
and the situation really does amplify, like you're saying, what's underneath already, those issues. Well, what do you think is underneath, though? What do you think is the main cause of mental and emotional torment for people? Is it their belief of themselves? Like in Buddhism, it's an understanding of a misunderstanding of yourself. They call it ego grasping or ego clinging, a type of ego. How do you see, or do you see a common cause for people's mental disturbances, mental issues?
um it
Or is
could
it
be
varied? Am I
a
simplifying it too much?
um I would say that maybe there isn't only one cause, because I think that maybe people, if I would say something like, what's the problem with my suffering, or maybe with your suffering, because we are still suffering even if we are searching for something new, or if I say something about the people who are viewing this talk between ourselves, it might be just too simplistic for them. And for me, and just to say, oh, this is it, that's my problem, I think it's not very fair, I would say, to the other person, because I don't know who's watching and what difficulties we have in our lives. But there are some themes that I'm noticing. Like, for example, I would say the one that we do not connect with ourselves enough, because in our world we are not taught to do that. Nobody teaches us to connect inside. Let's go
Mm,
into the outside. Let's search for something. Let's search for happiness outside of us. And
mm.
maybe anyone who's watching this, they might wonder, I have a simple question. How do you feel right now? I'm just answering this question. And how would you like to feel tomorrow? And I'm not sure if anyone would say, I would like to feel sad or anxious or depressed or sad. I don't think that anyone would say that. Maybe I'm wrong, but let's.
No, I don't think anyone would. Nobody wants suffering.
Nobody
In,
wants
in,
it. Yeah.
in Buddhism, that's the one thing that we all have in common, and a way to equalize everything, that nobody wants to suffer and everyone wants happiness. That's
Yes.
something that
Yes.
we all have in common, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. But and especially when we think about maybe tomorrow and when we think about yesterday, we tend to connect it with external factors. Maybe I am happy because somebody said nice to me, somebody said something nice to me, or I am sad because I've lost my job or something dramatic happens, which might be very real and important. But in the same way, if we put something, our happiness, into the outside, we also can cultivate a source inside of us, of happiness, so that we don't depend on something from the outside, like how the weather will be tomorrow, to let it affect my own happiness. Of course, it can affect me in a certain way, but we can learn skills, or we can learn a new way of approaching things, that we can say, okay, it's raining, or this happened. How can I feel it in my body? For example, this would be a very mindful approach, just to let ourselves experience what we have to experience. Because even if we don't like it, or even if we like it, what happened, happened, or what happens in this moment happens. And
So
sometimes
acceptance.
we don't really go there. We don't really go into accepting what's going on inside of us. We also always go maybe into the external factors. And meanwhile, actually, even modern psychology says that, and this is, I would say, the main secret in psychology, is that it's not the external factors that influence my happiness or my own well-being, but it's actually the way I perceive and think and process that kind of information is the small and essential element of my own well-being. It's influencing my own well-being. It's like if something bad happens, maybe a person who is going into the situation so easily, and maybe we are wondering, why is that person taking that so easy? And for me, it's so difficult. What's different? Because maybe it's the same situation. Maybe we both lost our job. What's different between him or me? So maybe it's not in the outside world, as a Buddhist would say, or as a psychologist would say, but let's go inside. And inside, because you asked me about causes of this situation, or people that have problems, what are their struggles, I would say that when we go inside, is there love for ourselves? And maybe this sounds very strange to say the L word for some people, but it's also connected with some people who come to me with, I would say, a very deep belief that I'm not enough. And maybe
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's something that I also struggled with. I'm struggling a little bit because I've practiced that for 30 years, 40 years almost. So we still have it somewhere inside of us. But yeah, we can cultivate something new.
Yeah. The not good enough one is a big one, isn't it, for a lot of people? And it's interesting. It reminds me of Nisargadatta, a spiritual teacher, said it's okay to look for happiness. It's just that we're looking for it in the wrong place. And as we're taught to sort of goal-orientated achievement type culture, that we look for it in these external achievements. And we all want to be happy, like we just said. We all want emotional well-being. We want to feel good, and we look for it in achieving a good job or achieving a good relationship and those things. And those things always wear off, don't they? Like, it's exciting to get a new job or even a new car or a new possession or something, but that very quickly wears off. So it becomes a bit addictive, looking for the next new thing and the next new thing, and it's quite anxious. So this brings me to my next question, is how much control do you think we have over our emotions and our feelings?
Well, that's a very good question, Chad, because we might have a lot of control of our emotion, and there are people who have it or less control. But my approach, connecting mindfulness with psychology, is that do we really need to control our emotions? Or maybe we just need not to let them control us. So this is a very different point of view, because I put myself into the center and seeing the emotions for just what they are, emotions. And I know it's very easy to say that, because when I'm in the middle of a feeling when I'm afraid, for example, the fear can be so strong, and we probably all connected with that kind of situation where we were afraid. Maybe we were afraid not of something real, but of something imagined, like I'm afraid of losing my job, or I'm afraid of losing somebody I love. But from my point of view, I would say that if I give myself time and I learn how to be with my emotion and to hold it and to see that it changes in time, that can have such a profound and healing effect by itself. Because in that moment, I'm not controlled by the emotion, and there is no need for me to control it.
Okay.
Does that make sense, Chad?
Oh, yeah, it's a reversal. We don't need to, I think, too, not needing to control our emotions. And if we still want to feel good, the Buddhist teachings say there's a natural type of joy that's just inherent within us. When we have acceptance of ourselves, with that calm clarity comes a natural type of peace. And it's very much different from excitement, which what people normally associate happiness with, the kind of type of excitement, but it's kind of a type of agitation. It's not really peaceful or joyful. So that's, yeah, it's definitely in line with Buddhism. Buddhism and psychology are just matching up so much these days, aren't they? Which perhaps leads me to my next question about labeling emotions. Often with mindfulness, they talk about I'm just feeling sad, or I'm just feeling this way, or that's just a thought kind of thing. And being able to label it sort of gives you some separation. But also with my tantric understanding of emotions, that emotions are just energy, and the actual experience of fear and the actual experience or the sensations of excitement and happiness are actually not that much different. It's actually how we label it that makes the difference. So I wanted to ask you about, do you think we should sort of identify our emotions, or do you think we should not label them at all and just see them as sensations and energies, a little bit like we do in Vipassana meditation?
Mm-hmm. Well, labeling, it's also, for example, a technique that it's used in cognitive behavioral psychology. And yes, it's also used actually in Buddhism for 2000. Now, I think I read an article about a nun, a Buddhist nun, that actually created this kind of labeling, but it didn't have that name, of course, like 1,600 years ago. So it's actually not new. Psychologists are new finding it, but it was already used. And labeling, I would say it's only useful when the intensity of our emotion is too big. So it's so big that it's overcoming everything in my awareness. And my awareness is blind from anything else, because I feel so much anger now in this moment, or I feel so much sadness. I cannot see anything else. I cannot see maybe something, the beauty in my life, or I cannot see anything else. And when that kind of intensity, and I notice that this is so strong, then labeling is very useful, because it can help bring down the activity of the amygdala. It's a small peanut thing in our brain that actually controls, I would say, our emotional states. And it helps bring it down, and then we can see things maybe more clearly. So it can enhance our awareness. But I would say that what you say about emotions being energy, it's something that I can connect very well with it. And I actually explain this into our course on emotional healing that we have on the Way of Meditation, is that emotions are not good or bad. And maybe this is the biggest misconception about them. They are not negative emotions. Maybe we can use that language, but they are not bad emotions. Emotions are information. If I have an emotion, something is important for me there. Something, it shows us, it's a great way to motivate our behavior, is that special energy, even if we don't like that emotion, but it's a special energy that goes into our body, that goes into our mind, and makes us feel alive and makes us do something that's important maybe in that moment. If indeed we have a skillful way to notice it, or maybe feel it, or feel the energy, or feel it in the body, whatever point of view we want to take on this, like from the mindfulness point of view, the tantric point of view, the energy one, the psychological, the behavioral point of view. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, emotions, I've heard people break down is to E in motion, energy in motion.
Yeah.
And I had this experience just yesterday. I was playing video games, playing FIFA online with my brother, and he was beating me. And we're very competitive, and I was getting very frustrated and very angry. And being a meditator, I kind of brought my awareness to my body and the sensations and where I was feeling it. And to my surprise, it was actually quite surprising. It was very similar. I had a great meditation like the day before. I was doing some Kundalini, some Tummo meditation, and I was feeling quite blissful and energized from my deep breathing and some practices I was doing. And I distinctly remember that sensation. And then when I remember feeling frustrated, or when I was feeling frustrated, I'm like, hey, it's pretty much the same sensation. Like this anger and frustration, that it feels the same in my body. And it was just really bizarre. And I thought, why am I calling this frustration and anger? And the day before, I was quite pleased with the result of my meditation. So I had that sort of direct experience of the energy moving through my body. So just to move on a little bit, because I'm really interested in how to help people feel good about themselves, feel complete, feeling whole. As you said, I think it's true. One of the main causes of discontent is not feeling good enough, not feeling complete, not feeling whole. Yeah. Within the things that I study and practice, the more spiritual type teachings, they do say that we are already a Buddha. There are some teachings that say we're already perfect the way there are, and there's reflections and contemplations that go along that way. And I know, though, when I teach those in my classes, people just love them. You know, it's nearly like they've wanted to hear that yes, you're okay the way you are with all your flaws. In fact, you're actually perfect in a higher divine type perspective. But I was wondering, with mindfulness, do you think there's any link to practicing mindfulness and acceptance of the present moment, acceptance of your emotions, and feeling good enough, and having that experience of feeling whole and complete? Do you think that mindfulness leads to that experience, or somehow is connected to feeling good enough?
I can say that for me, it did, and it does have that sense of feeling complete just the way I am. Because one of the attitudes that we are practicing is acceptance and letting go of any kind of critical thoughts that I'm not good enough or something else. And I would say that, and actually, we talked a little bit also about Jon Kabat-Zinn before, who I would say brought a lot of the mindfulness concept into this Western world with his program in the 1970s. And what he was saying is that as long as you are breathing, there is more right with you than wrong with you, which is, for me, it's very similar to what you said, Chad. And because when we go deeper than our thoughts, than our creations of our mind, into meditation or into awareness, there is a connection that's, I would say, speechless for me. So which is much more than whatever my mind can create as a thought, or as even as an emotion, or as a sensation. And I would say that connecting with that is such a great source of healing. And it's a
Yeah.
space where if we can offer ourselves the time to be in that space, then healing naturally comes into our lives.
Yeah, I think the same way as just resting your body is healing. Like a lot of the time, just rest, drink water, heals your body. In the same way, if you can just rest your mind and stop chasing all the thoughts and emotions, that it's naturally healing. It's sort of more of getting out of your own way.
Yeah.
And what you're saying there, it just reminds me, mindfulness, it kind of short circuits those constant negative thoughts of I'm not good enough, or I need to do this to be loved, and these subconscious beliefs that we might not even be aware of. So simply just being mindful of the present moment in your body, it short circuits and stops those thoughts. And then it just comes back to that natural healing of rest and the natural healing or the natural presence of joy that's there. There's kind of nothing you have to do because we're so used to doing something to achieve a result that this kind of feels counterproductive. In doing nothing, it seems, just being with mindfulness is actually so healing, and perhaps not only natural joy, but perhaps natural completeness, that when we're practicing mindfulness, we're naturally complete and whole. It is only the mind and the thoughts that divide, you know, good and bad, or this or that, that stops that natural occurrence from happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why I
So,
would say that in mindfulness, for example, even if we take the first step and just take 5 minutes of mindful awareness, which might be an awareness of an anchor, like our breath, but maybe even if the breath is not your anchor, a sensation in the body and just resting in the body, as you said, is such a great way of going down from our thinking mind that's always rushing somewhere, always doing something. And with this practice of resting maybe on something that is actually here, like the body, there is that space of healing, of natural awareness. And in that moment, I would say that there is the chance of feeling enough, because we talked about feeling enough in just being and not having to do anything more.
and not have to, like cognitive behavioral therapy and cognitive type approaches, often is positive thinking, like repeating an affirmation, say that I am enough, I am loved, I am divine, or something like that. So it's sort of like the thoughts that will lead you there. But it's different with mindfulness, isn't it? I think what we're getting at is there's more of a natural type of wholeness that doesn't rely on the thoughts. It doesn't rely on positive thinking because it's just who we are. Would that be fair to say?
I would say that with CBT is not very a big fan of affirmation, for example, having affirmations, because they can actually be very dangerous. Because when we do affirmations, I don't know, my hair is always beautiful. I'm just joking now, but I am happy, I am fulfilled, I am full of joy. This could be a great way to boost our our mood, I would say. But in the same way, it's something like putting the dirt under the cover. So maybe, yeah, I am joyful, but deep down here, there is some sadness that I do not approach because it's not comfortable. So it can be an avoidance strategy.
Mm.
And so I'm not saying that affirmations are not helpful, but we have to use it with care, like any other, I would say, technique or practice that we do, even with mindfulness. Because it might be easy, but I saw people that are struggling with mindfulness because because in mindfulness, for example, we go into the awareness of breathing. And we can see that, okay, maybe breathing is very traumatic for some people. For example, people with anxiety or maybe with severe panic attacks. When they are trying to connect with their breath, they might discover that it's not a nice feeling, and they just are not okay with that. So in that moment, that's the reason I would say that mindfulness is not just awareness, but it's kindness in action. It's a kind awareness, is because we need to see, okay, I'm struggling maybe with something, let me hold that and maybe just go into a place where I can tolerate this and maybe find another anchor, like maybe the sensations in the hands. This could be a first simple mindfulness practice that's easy and it's not hurting anybody. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, and this is why there's no one size fits all, like you
Yeah.
say. And the
Yeah.
Buddha called it upaya. All these methods that the Buddha taught, he called upaya, is translated something like skillful means or a skillful way. And you do have to become quite skillful and self-aware and have some introspection and just know the difference to say, maybe I need a quick fix right now to go into that job interview or something, and just tell yourself that you're okay, that you're confident, and that helps in the short term, but longer term mindfulness practices. Which leads me into another question. We've just launched the emotional healing course on the way of meditation, and I've got courses on the way of meditation. We've got lots of teachers up there. These are online courses. How much, what I find difficult is I teach meditation methods. The hardest thing is to get people to do it. People might understand mindfulness, they might understand meditation, but to actually get someone to practice it is another thing. And often they need a bit of contact and a bit of discussion with me or the teacher to help them along the way. How much, and you've got your emotional healing course is all about psychological tools and giving people the skills to deal with their emotions in their mind. How confident are you that people can do that by themselves? Like with an online course, it's sort of like a do-it-yourself kind of project. Here's all the screws and the nuts and the bolts, and you go away and have to do it yourself. Compared to how much do people really need that contact with a psychologist or a coach or a therapist to get through these issues? Or again, it's probably not an either or, both can help, but how much can people do it yourself? Because I've always been about teaching people methods and handing it over. Now it's up to you. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a great question, Chad, because indeed I have people who, for example, I also teach live, I would say live sessions, or nowadays online in groups or individual teachings. And that's indeed very helpful because we have this connection and we can share something. But that doesn't mean that that person will continue to practice. And I would say that just like in real estate, there is a rule: location, location, location to anything. Just find a good location and that's it. And in meditation is practice, practice, practice. And we can help people with the practice, but we cannot help them with practice, practice, with the second parts. And there is a chance that people who come maybe to your live sessions or mine live session or any teacher have the same problems in the end. And I think it's the same problem also in the online courses. And my intention when I created this course was, how can I create a simple enough course that doesn't take a lot of time in a day, like maybe 10 or 15 minutes per day, no more. So there are easy bits of information. But if we continue to practice that, even those 10, 15 minutes for 10 days, for example, it can bring a real change into that person. So I started from that, and I said, okay, we need a practice that's there every day. And there is a 3 breaths pocket practice that every day we have this practice that's simple enough to go with it and maybe change our perspective. And then going to the, I would say, deeper stuff, maybe going into seeing what emotions are, what's the psychology of emotions, what are the sources of our emotional pain, and seeing that a little bit, but not, of course, it doesn't imply that we do not go into special treatment or one-on-one I would teachings, or maybe searching for help if we need it. So I think that everyone has a point in his life or in her life, and just go and see what's the best thing I can do for myself today. Maybe today I need to go to Chad, or maybe today I need to go to a therapist, or maybe today I just would like to see an online course and go with that. But indeed, I cannot control, or anybody can control what anyone is doing. So it's a choice. And sometimes it's not easy, maybe because, for example, my experience with mindfulness, I learned mindfulness, even if I knew a lot of psychology, I would say, but in a moment where I was very overwhelmed, I felt so stressed, like I have to be the best. So yeah, that's a belief that I have. And this, when my daughter came into the world, it seemed like I cannot do this, and I couldn't be present in her life because it was all very stressful to deal with work and home and problems that I have. But I said, I need something more to help myself. And the first time, the way I learned mindfulness was with an online course. But indeed, then I saw the potential that it had in my life, and I decided to go further and to learn that. And I noticed how impactful it is to have a teacher. And I would say that I noticed that around week 4 in my self-paced course. And I said, okay, in this moment, this is something difficult and I would like to have a teacher. And afterwards, having a teacher was a different experience for me. But both ways were helpful in different moments in my life. So maybe, for example, with this, the emotional healing course that we are having on the way of meditation, the intention was to open a little bit our heart and our relationship that we have with ourselves and with our emotion. Because when we become aware of that in a safe way, and then in just tiny bits of things that we can do every day, maybe it's a meditation or psychological tool, because I bring this two together, then we can become a little bit of our own psychologist, and we can understand how it works. And I do have this kind of reviews and feedbacks from people. Oh my God, I had so much insight from this course, because I've been to a therapist and I have learned a lot of things, but still the way you put it in this course is very easy. And that's what was my intention, not to have it very complicated, or maybe going to trauma and things like that, but just to have it simple and to practice for 10 days in a row in a simple way. And I think that if we start that, then we can have this discipline, and we can really sense the effect on our well-being. And I'm also saying that it's just like going to the gym. If anyone heard about how to have six-pack in one day, just please call me or text me or send me an SMS, because I want to know it. But that's just not the way it works. So we cannot have that in one day. And it's exactly the same thing for our mind. We cannot have well-being maybe in one day. Maybe we need to practice something and to develop and to cultivate it.
Yeah, exactly. I think people sometimes have the impression that mental well-being is as simple as changing your mind or shifting your focus or making a choice, like in choice theory. So all happiness just comes down to a choice in the moment kind of thing. But in my experience and what I've learned, it's very organic, like you're saying. It doesn't happen in one day. It's a habit. The Buddha certainly taught this. The Buddha said everything's a habit, you know. In fact, in Tibetan, the main tradition I've studied with, the word meditation means becoming familiar with. So when you sit down to meditate, you're becoming familiar with mindfulness. You're becoming familiar with acceptance. And it's through that familiarity that it seeps in and really makes a difference. And I guess it's this practice. One of the key ingredients is self-responsibility. Like, you can learn about a good diet, but nobody can force feed you. You know, you have to make the right choices and eat the right foods. And it's the same with our mental and emotional well-being. We have to every day sort of make those choices, and it builds up over time. Look, we've certainly been getting some great feedback from your course, Healing Your Emotions on the Way of Meditation. We're going to leave a link in the comments so you can go check it out. Are there any final words? We'll wrap this up. We've spoken so much, and I've loved what you've been saying. I also, one of the final things, how you bring in kindness. People are saying, you know, they love your voice. They love how kind your voice sounds, the compassion. And we've touched on that, but that's a big part of it, isn't it? And something I'd probably say is that not only do we have the natural joy when we can stop and be mindful, there's just a natural happiness from not doing anything and just acceptance, but there's also a natural type of kindness and gentleness that comes from that. Maybe we can just finish on this last question about how that relates to well-being and the kindness and compassion side of things. It's certainly important in Buddhism. What would you say about that?
I would say it's essential in our life, and also this is something very important also nowadays in mindfulness, because now mindfulness became, maybe there are some topics that are just pure awareness, and this is not what it's all about. Because in mindfulness, if we don't have the attitude of kindness towards ourselves and towards others, there is no mindful. Because like, I like the way, the example of a sniper can be very mindful in a way, can be very aware because he's very concentrated, he sees very clearly everything, but that's not mindfulness. That's not, he's not being mindful.
A sniper, like a
sniper.
Yeah.
Yes, a sniper. Yeah, he really needs to go to see his target. So, but where is that attitude of caring, of compassion, as you said, of kindness? And without that, we do not have any kind of mindful awareness. And I would say that this is the essential element to change the way we relate with ourselves. Having this kindness that maybe in this moment I'm very frustrated, or maybe in this moment I'm very angry, or having the kindness to see that I'm not good enough, and I hear this thought over and over again. And when we give space to this kindness to hold everything that we have, like emotions and thoughts and sensations, something magical happens, I would say. But this is something that I could say a lot about that, and maybe we could talk a lot about that, but it's quite, there are some specific steps to go into that and really connect with this kind of kindness that I think that we all have. I think we can all learn, just as we all learned how to make our first steps. It's something that I learned. It's something that anyone can learn. So we just need to take that first tiny step, which maybe is just a small decision of what do I need right now in this moment to learn and to go forward into my own well-being. And I think it's very available to ourselves. And
it's so available. Yeah, people call it heartfulness. You know, there's mindfulness is heartfulness. And in the Tibetan tradition, they actually don't separate the mind and heart as we do in
It's
the
the
West.
same
But as you say,
concept.
it's a big topic. It's so important. I know you include it in the course a lot and you emphasize it, which I love. One thing that surprises me is the small child came up to most people and the small child was struggling, feeling bad about itself. You wouldn't say to that small child, "You idiot, you know, you're so dumb. You know, why haven't you got yourself together yet?" You know, you'd be compassionate to the child. You'd nurture that child and say positive things to it. That's most people, I would say. I mean, I believe most humans have kind hearts. But yet we don't treat ourselves the same way. If we're struggling, you know, we often beat ourselves up or judge ourselves or are harsh to ourselves. But it's kind of nurturing that inner child that when we are struggling, we do have to nurture that and be kind and loving. And just that in itself, that type of mindfulness or heartfulness is healing.
Yeah.
Um,
But in the same way as we have this kind of inner critic voice that we are hearing, we also have this other compassionate voice, but we
mm,
cannot hear it anymore because it wasn't practiced. We didn't practice it. We practiced this one, the critic, the, okay, I have to do more. I have to be more. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing that enough. So maybe sometimes we just need to practice also this one to let it grow. And this one,
mm,
yeah, maybe it has its role. So we don't have to give it up and say, oh, that's not good enough. But just grow this one a little bit and
yeah,
magic can
it's like that.
happen.
Absolutely. It's like that Native American proverb or metaphor about the two wolves in your head, the good wolf and the evil wolf. And it all depends which one you feed, which one,
Exactly. Which one do
which
you
ties into
choose
what,
to feed? Yeah.
yeah, cultivating those qualities. Look, it's been so wonderful talking to you today, Adrianna. If anyone out there wants to go check out her course on the way of meditation, it's called Healing Your Emotions. People are getting some wonderful results from it. So go check it out. We'll leave the links in the comments or up top. So, yeah, thank you so much, Adrianna. I love your
Thank you.
work and thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Chad. And